Good evening and welcome to the Ithaca Public School bond presentation. Thank you for joining us this evening. At the end of our presentation tonight, we will take some time to answer questions that you may have. If you'd like to ask a question, you can text your question to 385-985-3341. The number will also be on the bottom of the screen throughout the presentation. So with that, we'll start off with a little bit of background. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what brings us up to the point of asking for a bond on May 4th of 2021. So this all started back in 2018. We did a strategic plan as a district, and we had a variety of stakeholders involved in that process. We had parents and students and teachers and principals and board members and community members. And the superintendent involved in looking at the district and came up with some goals. One of those goals was to improve our facilities. So with that, the next step was to do a facility study, and that's where we had some engineers and architects come through each of our buildings, the junior, senior high, North Elementary, and South Elementary, and they wrote up a report, gave us a report on the conditions of the building, what was good, what needed to be fixed, and what was the long-term prognosis for each of those buildings and the usable life left in those buildings. Part of that study was also looking at our student enrollment. So we looked at some historical data going back to the late 1990s and then also projecting out 5 years into the future just to see what type of demand would be there for a building into the future. From that facility study, several important points came out that shaped the current bond proposal. And first off was the conditions at North and South. Those buildings are older. We'll get into some more details later in the presentation. But they're also in residential areas, and they're landlocked with very little potential for any expansion. If you're trying to combine two buildings into one, neither site was really suitable for that. And considering the age and condition of the buildings, it would not make sense to invest that kind of money in those facilities. So from the conditions at North and South, and then also with our student population being a smaller district now with just over 1,000 students K-12, the best course of action was to build a new elementary building on this site where the junior senior high school currently is, and that would be the most efficient setup for the district going forward. So a little timeline for the project. The election is May 4th. If the bond passes, then we would immediately go into a design phase for the new elementary building, and that would go from May to December 2021 this year. So all the decisions that go into building a new elementary would be made at that point, working with the architect and the construction manager. So people that would be involved with that would be teachers and students and parents, the principals, school board members, community members would all have input in all those decisions that have to be made. We would also get our local law enforcement involved for their perspective from a school safety lens. We'd also work with our local fire and rescue to get their perspective and input again from their viewpoint on fire and rescue, and then also working with the city manager, just managing that transition, traffic flow, and all those kinds of issues. So from there, the bids would go out in January of 2022. Construction would start in the spring of 2022. That would continue through 2023, and then the building would be ready to move into in the fall of 2023. So lengthy process, but it's a big project. For the junior senior high school, the remodeling that would be done in this building, the design phase would start in February of 2022 and go through September, bidding in the fall, and then construction would be over the summer of 2023. So again, with this building having students in it, you can't do construction and remodeling while students and teachers are in it. So that's the timeline for the project. Some information on the bond. So the bond is for $30 million. It'll be paid off over 27 years, 9 months. When you see the ballot language, it'll say 28 years. The state makes you round up, but it'll actually be paid off in 27 years and 9 months. From the $30 million, the bulk of that will be building a new elementary, but we also have money set aside for necessary remodeling and upgrades at the junior senior high school, also the purchase of some technology and some new buses. So looking at the proposed levy, how many mills would we need to ask for in order to raise $30 million? So our current debt levy was 1.62, so we made our last debt payment on our bonded debt in 2020, and it took 1.62 mills to make that payment. In order to raise $30 million, we would need to ask for an increase of 2.5 mills for a total levy of 4.12 mills to raise $30 million. So that would be, over the life of that bond, the most mills that would be asked for. What happens over the life of a bond, as your tax base continues to grow, the number of mills that you need to levy to raise the money to make the payment go down over time. So over the life of the bond, the average is estimated about a 3.37 mil levy over the life. So this shows the projected student enrollment, and this was completed during the facility study and then during the bond application process. So you can see that starting in 2020-21, they project out 5 years to 2024-25, and that's looking at actual live births in Gratiot County, children being born currently, and when they start school. So you can see that our student population is leveling off by 2024-25 at just above 1,000 students. So right now we have around 1,080 students K-12. In 2024-25, we're going to be just above 1,000, around 1,020, 1,025 students, and going into the future, that's where we'll be at. So when you look at those numbers, we are a smaller district now than what we used to be, and we can most efficiently function with one elementary building combined, and then the current junior senior high school. So let's talk about our current elementaries a little bit. So we'll talk about our oldest one first, which is North Elementary. The oldest part of that building is the current media center. So if you have been around Ithaca for a while, you know that facility used to be a gym, and it used to actually be Ithaca High School's gym. It was built in 1936, so it's 85 years old. The old Ithaca High School used to sit over where the bell is at in the front of the North Elementary property. That was converted into a media center in the early 90s, so that is the oldest part of that building. North Elementary itself was opened in 1952, so that is 69 years old. And then the gym at North is 27 years old. Again, that was added in the early 90s, the same time when the media center work was done. South Elementary was opened in 1965, so that's 56 years old. So let's talk a little bit about why a new elementary school is the smart investment. So looking at North and South, we've already talked about that neither site was appropriate or would accommodate combining two elementaries into one. Not enough space, you'd have to add on, and there's, due to the landlocked nature of those properties, just not suitable. When you also look at the needs of 21st century learners, technology is at the heart of that, and those buildings are very difficult to add technology onto them and continue to upgrade them. They just were never designed in the 1950s and 60s for the type of technology that we're using today, and the electrical demands and all the things that go on behind the scenes in the infrastructure. The schools are also not very user-friendly for folks that are using wheelchairs and walkers. If you have a handicap, you have a hard time getting upstairs, managing different levels. North and South have some issues, and that's very difficult to fix and make it work. We have workarounds that we've done to make it work, but not ideal by any stretch. The other thing with North and South is, if you've ever been there at pickup and drop-off time, it's very busy. You're managing parent traffic, picking up and dropping off students along with the buses, and it just gets very hectic. So if you think about those schools, they were built in the 50s and 60s, so how did kids get to school when you lived in town back then? So you either walked or you rode your bike. So, schools were built in residential neighborhoods for a reason, because they were close for kids to walk and ride their bike. Country kids rode in on a bus. So you really didn't have those schools designed to handle lots of parent traffic. But today, 2021, that's not the reality of how kids get to school. So many of our students are dropped off and picked up by parents or grandparents or family members, older siblings, and that just creates a lot of congestion. And it's a safety issue. We've made it as safe as it can be, but it's less than ideal. And in residential areas, those streets, they were just never designed, to accommodate that traffic flow. Also, with older elementary schools, in the age of COVID, a lot of people are now much more knowledgeable about HVAC systems. So, you think about how much fresh air do you need to bring into a building every hour, and what kind of filtration system do you have to, filter out any airborne illnesses or viruses. So, older buildings were not designed with HVAC in mind. It was designed more for keeping air in, to make it as effective as possible for heating it and keeping it warm. So, all of those reasons for older schools, they're not as healthy or designed with modern energy efficient materials, and just more expensive to operate. Currently, for the maintenance and upkeep at North and South Elementary compared to a new elementary, if we were to close North and South, move into a new elementary, right off the bat, just from efficiencies, we'd save, and this is a conservative estimate, about $55,000 a year. I think it's going to be higher than that, but again, we use conservative numbers, just based off, the energy that would be saved from not having both of those buildings operating and having one more efficient building, along with just with a new building, you're not spending as much on fixing things and repairing things and the expensive maintenance. Also, with a new elementary building, those can be designed with the latest materials. It would be 25% more energy efficient right off the bat, so that is also an efficiency that would allow us to save some money there, and again, use those dollars for educating our students instead of heating buildings and maintaining older buildings. Also, having all the schools on one site would be more efficient operation. Our folks right now are kind of spread out over town, and you lose some time with doing that, and having it all on one site would be much more efficient for staff working together, for maintenance, custodial crews, for transportation, parents, everyone that uses the facilities. So a question that comes up, what happens to North and South? So they would both be put up for sale. I don't necessarily know what the commercial value is or what they could be repurposed for, but you don't know until you put them up for sale and then see what happens. We would still maintain them in the sense that we're going to mow the grass, keep the heat on at a minimal level to keep the pipes from freezing, those type of things. But they would go up for sale, and we would entertain offers. The gym at North we would maintain and continue to use. That's a nice facility, and gym space is tight for our district, so we would continue to maintain and use that. That was added on to North in the early 90s, so it would be relatively easy to separate that from the building if needed and continue to maintain that. So looking at educational reasons, what are the benefits of the bond, what it offers? Well, first of all, when you think about a new school, you can design it so that education and the heart of 21st century learning is at the heart of the building, which is technology. So you can integrate that into the design rather than trying to add it on to an old structure. You can also design it so that technology changes, so you're going to do upgrades over the life of that building. You can design it so it's easy and efficient to make those upgrades rather than cutting into floors and walls and ceilings to run cabling and add things to it. Also, for a new elementary school, you're going to have the latest safety features designed into it, so that's why you get law enforcement's input into that. So you can think about things about, how do you approach the building, secure entrances, how do you efficiently lock a building down if you need to, camera systems, angles, all of those things. So All of those things can be designed in to the building to make it as safe as possible for our students. Also for traffic flow, you get the city manager involved in the city of Ithaca and look at traffic flow and what's the best way to bring people in and out. If we're all on one site, we can have a separate area for parent pickup and drop off that's efficient with an entrance and an exit to get people in and out quickly, safely. And then also a separate bus pickup and drop off and where the staff would enter as well. So just overall, coming to one site instead of going to south and then the north and then the junior senior high would be much more efficient and safe for our parents and students. When you think about the technology that would go into a new building, so what would that look like? So if we walked into one of those classrooms, you would see things like a short throw projector, a smart board, you would see a Wi-Fi access point just for that classroom to connect them to the network. You would see a document camera that the teacher can use. You would see the students K2, you would see them using iPads, 312, you would see them using Chromebook laptops. You would also see classroom sound amplification systems built into those classrooms, so the speakers are actually mounted up in the ceiling. The teacher wears a mic around their neck and that projects their voice, so every student's in the front row in that setup, so it doesn't matter whether you're in the corner or in the front. The teacher doesn't have to strain their voice. They can speak in a normal tone and it amplifies their voice, so all the students hear the instruction that's going on, which will be a great improvement. The other thing is, when you think about having all your elementary school or elementary teachers in one building, that's going to improve communication and curriculum alignment. If you think right now, if you're a second grade teacher and you want to talk to your third grade counterpart, it's not just going down the hallway like in one building. In the current setup, they're literally across town. So that's a much more difficult coordination piece to pull off. All in one building. We'd also eliminate a student transition from second grade to third grade, changing buildings. The students would literally just go down the hall to the third grade classroom. So that would be a much smoother transition as you go from lower L to upper L. Teacher conversations, obviously the closest teams are your grade level teams. They work together, communicate daily. But it would also facilitate conversations, the grade level below and the grade level above, which again would be great for those curriculum conversations and instructional conversations that happen on a daily basis. Looking at the junior senior high for some upgrades that are going to happen there. Again, the classroom technology, so what I just described in the elementary would be the same for the junior senior high school. They would be using Chromebooks. Again, wireless technology upgrades for the network, so wireless or Wi-Fi access points in each of the rooms. A big one, it would be air conditioning for the classrooms. So I don't think I mentioned this, but with a new elementary, that would be designed with air conditioning. So no more window unit air conditioning units, which are not very efficient and don't look that great. Also eats up a lot of maintenance time taking them in and out. But the junior senior high would also receive that for the classroom, so much more comfortable learning environment for our students and teachers. The cafeteria will be completely remodeled, so that will continue to be where the junior senior high students eat breakfast and lunch. But it would also be remodeled to better accommodate our productions. So that is our major presentation space where our musicals and plays, our concerts, and some of our assemblies take place. So if you've been to any of those, our lighting and sound system needs some work, and seating is a challenge. So if you're sitting behind someone like me, you're staring at the back of my head for most of the performance or trying to look around it, which isn't great. So the remodeling would include telescopic seating, so it would collapse in and then come out for presentations, and it would be tiered so that you could actually see over the person in front of you. New lighting and sound system, which would be a huge improvement for our theater program and the productions that go on there. So that would be exciting. The old kitchen is going to be taken out, and that area will be converted, some storage, some expanded seating. And we'll talk a little bit more about a new central kitchen that would be involved with this. Another upgrade would be down by the gym, the two main restrooms there. So when we have large crowds at our games, the restrooms there right next to the stairs get heavily used, and they're right now not very ADA friendly. So those would get remodeled and improved ADA access. The stairs would also be addressed. Right now, if you're in a wheelchair or in a walker and you want to go up to the mezzanine area for concessions, you have to walk all the way through the gym, go around the corner, go up the ramp hallway to get up there, which is not ideal. So that will be addressed with the stairways there as well, so you can leave the gym and get up there without having to go all the way around. At the front of the school right now, our main entrance is not handicap accessible. We have stairs you have to negotiate, so a new concrete ramp will be put in there. And then, of course, with the air conditioning addition and the new technology, the electrical system was going to have to be upgraded in the building as well. So those are the main upgrades for the junior senior high. So looking at taxes, why is it a good time right now to ask for a bond? Currently, as I mentioned, we paid off our bond debt in 2020. We levied 1.62 mils for that. We need to add 2.5 mils to get up to that 4.12 mils. But right now, the bond rates are still pretty competitive. And quite frankly, with construction, it never gets cheaper. So we know inflation happens every year. If we don't do this now, if we wait 5-10 years, it's going to be more expensive to get the same thing. So looking at some costs, try to help you see, what would this cost me as a homeowner. We picked this as a typical home in our school district, so a market value of $100,000, a taxable value of $50,000. So when you look on your property tax statement, your taxable value is usually about half of what your market value is, sometimes a little higher, sometimes a little lower, just depending on what township you live in. So that would cost that homeowner for 4.12 or for the 2.5 mil increase, it would cost $125 extra over what they paid in 2020. So that's $10.42 more a month, or $240 a week. And then you can see the calculation at the bottom there. So talking about your property tax statement, so you'll see some things on there like SEV, which stands for State Equalized Value. So you just want to make sure that you're looking at your taxable value when you're doing your calculations. If you've owned your home since or before 2008, when the recession hit, chances are once the recession hit, you were probably like most homeowners around our school district and around the state and the country. You probably saw your taxable values go down, and your assessed value probably went down as well, because the housing market took a dip at that time. And for the most part, by now, the taxable values and assessed values are just starting to get back up to where they actually were back then. So, that's kind of a good thing from this standpoint, because the taxable values are still relatively low compared to what they would have been without the recession. So to kind of give you an idea of what this costs, like a real person. So I use my own home as an example. So we've lived in our house. We bought our house in 2005 out in Emerson Township. I just recently, we received our 2021 property tax assessment. You probably received yours in the mail. I think we got it last week in February. So our new assessment came in at taxable value of $71,709. So a 2.5 mil increase for our family, that would equal out to $179 a year, or $14.92 per month. So when you look at your taxable value, it might be a little lower than that, a little higher, but that's a good ballpark number for most homeowners. So what does that look like compared to other debt levies in other districts around us? So I think this is a good representation to see what it looks like as far as what we're asking for as far as a bond goes. So Breckenridge passed their bond last year, and they're currently levying 4 mils for that bond. If our bond passes on May 4th, we'd be at 4.12, so just slightly above Breckenridge for our bonded debt. And then you look at Shepherd and Beale City and Elma, they're at 7 mils for their debt levies, and then St. Louis is at 8 mils, and Ashley is at 8.4. So if you've been in any of those districts lately, you'll notice they have new facilities. And the reason for that is they're just like Ithaca in many ways, that most of the schools around here were built in the 1950s and 60s, and it's 2021. So, you know, it's just time. We've gotten good use out of our facilities. There's still some good life left in the junior senior high. They did a very nice job when they built this building, and you know, with the upgrades that will get us through. The elementaries are, as I've mentioned, have the biggest limitations, and with our reduced student population, just doesn't make sense to continue to operate 2 separate elementaries anymore. So to kind of give you a visual of what this would look like, so this kind of gives you a picture of the footprint of the building and what it would look like here on the same campus as the junior senior high school. So as you look at this, this is directly to the north of the current junior senior high school building. You can see that there is a parking lot with an entrance and an exit for parent pickup and drop off and visitor parking on the south side of the building. On the north side of the building, you can see there's a separate parking lot for the bus loop for the pickup and drop off, and also for staff parking on that side of the building. You can see that there is a small playground on the west side of the building. So we have a preschool program that would be part of that building, and they have very specific code requirements and regulations for their playground, so they have to have their own playground. So that would be kind of the lower L of the building, the preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, those lower L building or grade levels. And then as you go around, you can see some playgrounds in the back, a lower L playground, an upper L playground. And then I have some different views that we'll show to talk about the other parts. So this is just a close-up of the entrance for the bus pickup and drop off. And then on the east side of the building, you can see you have a lower L playground, upper L playground. It's fenced in. And you can also see the FFA land lab comes up next to the building there to the north as well. And then from the southeast view, you can see we have a new gym, which will be approximately the same size as north current gym. And then for the first time, we have an actual cafeteria for our elementary students, so we're pretty excited about that. Located on the west side of that cafeteria is the new central kitchen, which will connect the new building to the current junior senior high school. So as I mentioned, in the cafeteria, that old kitchen area would be gutted out and replaced with a new central kitchen where the food would be prepared, and they would serve the elementary students on one side, and then the other side, our current cafeteria would continue to be used for breakfast and lunch for the junior senior high students, and they would prepare food for that side as well. The big advantage that our elementary students will notice right away is that the food will be hot and fresh. So this is not a criticism of our food service. They do a great job, but this is how it currently works. We prepare the food here at the main kitchen. We put the food into Mermites, load it into a van, haul it to north and south, and then serve it. So you can imagine it's not as high quality as if you take it right from the kitchen right to the serving line. So you know, having a cafeteria for our elementary students to eat in for breakfast and lunch not only is a better experience for the students, but better quality of food. The other big advantage with that is we no longer have to tie up our gym for a part of the day to serve lunches. And you can imagine that eating on a gym floor is not great for the gym floor. You know, it just happens. Things get spilled, dropped. You get grease on the floor, and that's a lot of wear and tear on those gym floors. The other nice thing about that is the principals now have the entire day to schedule that gym for classes. So you're not shutting that facility down for, you know, an hour, 2 hours, 2.5 hours out of the day. So another big advantage. So with that, in conclusion, before we get to questions, just a few more things to cover, but there was a lot of thought and work put into crafting the current bond issue, and what's being asked for is what we really need. Going forward, the smartest move we can make is to build a new elementary building and close north and south. It's better for educational reasons. It will meet the needs of our students as 21st century learners, technology, health and safety, efficiencies, convenience for parents and students. There's just so many positives that it's going to set the district up for success long term. The other part of this is we need to think about this. It's $30 million. It's a lot of money, but it's an investment not only in our students' education but in our community and town. When you open a new school, for homeowners, that is a strong positive indication that your town is growing and prospering, and it helps home values. It helps attract investments. It helps attract people to the community. So there are positives outside of just the educational realm as well. So if you think about the long-term effects of this, so this bond passes May 4th, we pay it off in 2049. That seems like a long ways down the road. But at that time, we will still have a relatively new elementary school, about midlife cycle, still in good shape. And at that time, our bond debt will be paid off. And it will be time to address the junior senior high school then. So the investments that we're going to put into the junior senior high school with this bond gets us to that point, and gets the most use and life out of this facility as we can. But if you think about that, that's going to be a huge project in 2049, and it's much easier to do as a community to tackle one building at a time. So this part is addressing our needs for the elementary, setting us up for the future, and then when that's paid off, we can have this conversation. It won't be me, obviously. Be a whole new crew of people. Hopefully I'll still be a grandparent living in the area then, and but we'll be ready to address the next need for our school and our community. So that's why we're hoping that we get supported with this bond issue. So the vote, when do you vote? It is Tuesday, May 4th, coming up. A little over a month and a half away. So polls open at 7 a.m., close at 8 p.m. If you would like to vote absentee ballot, those will be coming out, I believe, next week. Saturday's March 20th, so they were supposed to be out right around March 20th. So check with your township clerk or city clerk if you prefer to vote absentee ballot. You can request those and vote early and have it turned in, and then not try to navigate that busy Tuesday when you're working and picking up kids and trying to close out your day. Questions, we're going to get to questions here in a second, but that's my contact information. So after watching the presentation, if a question pops up or it comes up in a conversation you have later on, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Also, we've got some good information out there on our website and on social media. So just real quick, if you go to ithacaschools.net, you'll see a banner at the top. And we have the bond banner there. If you click on that, it takes you to the bond site, and lots of good information there. This presentation will be recorded and will also be on that as well for future viewing. On our Facebook, we also do regular posts with bond information as well. We also have a Twitter account that is new, and an Instagram. So we have regular releases going out on those platforms as well. So if you don't follow us, we'd like you to follow us. Good information is going to be coming out, new information, fresh information every week. And that takes us to our questions. So, okay. Question is, I may have missed this, what is the projected enrollment looking out, say, 5 to 10 years? So the student enrollment projections only go out 5 years, so I can tell you that. The reason they only go out 5 years is they actually look at live births in Gratiot County. So from that, they give you a conservative estimate, a rosy estimate, and then worst case estimates. We usually go with the middle of the road estimate. And 5 years, they're predicting we're going to be in the low 1,000 range for K-12 students. So it's going to bounce around between 1,010, 1,020 students. 10 years out, Unless something significant changes in Gratiot County, I don't see that changing significantly up or down. I think we're going to stay pretty level for a while. A typical incoming kindergarten class now and into the future is 75 to 85 students, and that's going to be pretty consistent up through the grade levels. In small schools, you get that occasional class that is a little bit bigger and some that are a little bit smaller. You know, that happens here and there, but the average will be right around 75 to 85 students a class. The big thing for us is, you know, if you want to move to our district, where do you live? So, you know, housing is a challenge around our district. So that's one of the big things. If you're moving to the area and you wanted to send your children to school, you know, finding a place to live can be difficult. So hopefully we'll have some more housing developments come up. That would help, but you know, that's hard to predict. Okay. That was the only question. All right.